Alright, moving on to our next Patreon request, and this one comes from Luke Morehouse, who asked me a what-if scenario of, what if Skynet took over Lyoko? As always, before we get started, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link below, head on over to my Patreon, and hit the third tier. That'll allow you access to send me requests for videos to do here on YouTube, as well as check out all the cool stuff over on Patreon as well. But other than that, let's get started. So basically, this story, this scenario basically is, like I said, asking, what if Xana had control of, what if Skynet had control of Lyoko? Now, you have to understand that, like, let's just say Skynet somehow killed Xana and took over Lyoko. Now, you have to understand that Xana's on a different level. It's almost like insane of what he can do. From creating life, creating machines, to creating, possessing people like a ghost, to doing all this and that. Skynet couldn't do most of those things, like possess people, or, take control of people's bodies, or even, like, basically alter the elements around him. But, like, let's say for sake of argument, Xana's gone. Maybe not so much as Skynet killed Xana, but more like, what if Lyoko warriors, this is after they've beaten Xana, and what's left of Lyoko has been taken over by Skynet. Now, the thing you have to understand is, like I said, Skynet doesn't have that same kind of, shall we say, imagination that Xana does. But however, Skynet's very much a thinking machine. It's an artificial intelligence, and it is capable of, like, I don't know, building a fucking time machine to send Terminators back to the present, or the past and the future, whatever, and send them to kill John and Sarah Connor. There's always that. But basically, Skynet would work it in a way that's not as imaginative as Xana was. You see, Skynet would be more about, cold, hard logic than anything else, and be more about, how can this benefit my programming? How can this benefit my objectives? All of that. So I think it would look at, like, a lot of the monsters that belong to Xana, and basically be like, well, I don't need that model, I don't need that, I don't need that. But what it would take, the ones that it would keep around, if it had possession of Lyoko and all of the monsters in it, like all of Xana's unused monsters, basically use them, mold them into bringing them to life here on the real world, and probably even, like, install some some new tech, like, that would mod it with, like, Terminator tech or hunter killers or whatever nightmare robots you saw in the world of Terminator Resistance. So there is that. The other thing is too is that if the Lyoko warriors are battling Skynet and think, like, oh, Return to the Past can really help, the thing of it is that I don't know if Return to the Past, because for those who remember, the reason why they had to, like, limit or stop altogether doing Return to the Past was because they found out every time they did, it was just making Xana stronger and more intelligent every time. But Xana was so connected to Lyoko, that was the reasoning. Skynet is a different entity altogether, so I don't really know if, like, they did Return to the Past, that it would have the same kind of effect that it would on him. Like, I don't know if it would, on Skynet, I don't know if it would have the same kind of effect of making Skynet stronger every time around. But I will say this, that, time travel is something that Skynet is, well familiar with. Obviously, building the machine that would, like I said, obviously building the machine that would send the Terminator back in time and start all this mess. I will also say that, like, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no that Return to the Past wouldn't affect Skynet the same way Return to the Past affected Xana. Because, again, Xana was connected to the world of Lyoko. So obviously anything that happened to Lyoko happened to him. Skynet would be like a foreign entity in this scenario. So I don't think, since being a foreign entity wouldn't have that kind of same effect as it would on Skynet as it did on Xana. I would also say that it would probably be more, like I said, focused more on logic, and probably maybe not so much in over elaborate schemes like Xana had, and just be like, you were doing all these elaborate again, Skynet is a being of logic, and I think you would realize that, like, why don't I just kill rather than some over elaborate plot that they can escape by the skin of their teeth, just create a Terminator unit from pieces around the factory and just have them kill him. And again, Xana tried that too, but like it was very poorly built. Skynet doesn't believe in poorly, shoddy built objects. It believes in efficiency. It believes in, this is the object that's going to kill you. So it's just going to make a T unit and just probably kill all the Lyoko warriors and be done with it. That's how I kind of imagine it would. That's how it would probably go. But yeah. So those are just kind of my thoughts on the matter. What do you guys think it would be like if Skynet took over? If Skynet took over Lyoko? What do you think it would be like? Do you think do you think Skynet would be better? It would be more efficient at this than Xana would be, or do you think it would be? I don't know what any of this, like Skynet would be like, I don't know what any of this means, or there's no logic to any reason, there's no reasoning or logic to this world and how it works. But anyway, yeah, just comment below, let me know. Once again, I'd like to thank Luke Morehouse for this Patreon request, as well as continued patronage. And like I said earlier, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link below, head over to my Patreon, hit the 3rd tier, and go from there. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.